We are still waiting on Dr. Zemsky, Dr. Prywes, Perlson Cost, and Dr. Berry.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they did all RSVP. See it. All right. I just got an email there. I reset the link wasn't working for them. So they should be joining in a minute. All right, I just resent it. They were having trouble getting on with the link.
Okay.
There we go. Good morning, Dr. Zemsky. You're muted.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Bill.
Morning. Morning.
All right. Well, we have a quorum, so Commissioner, if you're ready to start.
Sure. So I will call the meeting to order. And I think that the first order of business is to the minutes. Is that correct, Tiffany?
Yes. So
Do
we
I
can
have a
make a
motion?
motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So the minutes have been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on them?
Nope.
If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
And any opposed? All right, so the minutes are adopted. And I'm just having trouble pulling up the agenda here. I thought I had it.
I can resend it to you.
There it is. Sorry about that. And so then there was a, so there we are. So we're moving right along on that. Sorry for that little hiccup. On number 3, a program update. So first and foremost, as I began to say, well, people were joining, thank you. And it's good to meet you all virtually. My name's Brian Caffarelli. I'm new to the department. I started in March. And, I want to thank Michelle Siegel for her leadership and all that she did for this program. She was instrumental, from the regs onward and making sure that it maintained its integrity throughout all the changes to cannabis in Connecticut. I thought that it would be helpful for you for me to give you an overview of the adult use program, just to give you a little flavor of what's going on with that, as it clearly intersects with the medical program and kind of highlight some of those intersections. And then you know, some updates on the medical program itself. So that's what I was planning to do, but did anyone before, sorry, Dr. Zemke, is it Zemsky? Oh, okay.
My coffee.
Oh, okay. Cheers. But I don't know. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I have a PowerPoint that I was going to share, and it don't get overwhelmed. It's not a it's not a long one by any means. Let me just figure out how to do this best. Sorry.
It's a share button up at either the top or bottom of your, oh, there you go.
There we go. So this is what I wanted to do was just kind of, like I said, give you an overview of adult use cannabis. Let's see here. Just a little further background on me. First of all, I just wanted to let you know that I'm returning to DCP. I did spend 2 years in the legal department, so familiar with the agency. Actually, I practice in the drug control division, so it makes it easy for me to kind of walk back into this area of the division. I knew the directors well then, and it's been great to get reacquainted with them. Some I didn't lose touch with, and you are all very fortunate to have Rod Marriott leading the charge on this. He's just a intelligent, excellent, you know, individual pharmacist who just does a spectacular job for the agency. Also wanted to mention that Shirley Skyers Thomas joined the agency this summer as the Deputy Commissioner for responsibilities for regulating cannabis under the new law, in addition to other areas where she's going to be working. She comes from the legislature as well. She worked as counsel to the Majority Leader, and she's a great addition, and you'll see her around. This is the role that was previously held by Andrea Comer, who is now in the treasurer's office, but she remains on the Social Equity Council, which is part of the adult use cannabis program. That's a separate entity that's housed in DECD. So the adult use cannabis market, it's healthy, it's growing. I found it in a good place. I can't take any of the credit for it. It was a thoughtful and successful rollout, despite you know, there weren't many headlines, you know, compared to other states, because they garnered headlines for all the bad things that were happening, the lines and other hiccups. So it was, you know, in that sense, it was helpful not to be the first. So the law, as you know, it passed in 2021. It went into effect that July. Licenses and that process began February of 22. And just to kind of remind you all that there is a social equity component, and half the licenses are awarded to applicants who meet that criteria, and the other half is a general lotto. We don't decide who gets licenses. It's all done by a third party, and it makes it much easier for us. So they just tell us who won the lotto, and we issue those licenses. So that was completed in December, and sales began this year of January 10th. So right now, there are, let me just make sure I get the numbers right here. So right now we currently have 16 hybrid retailers, and so that's of particular interest to you in this group. because those 15 of them were converted from the medical market. So they filed medical preservation plans, and they are, they still have pharmacists there, and it was a priority to keep the medical program intact while the launch of this new program was happening. And I feel that we have successfully done that through Rod's leadership and the guardrails that were put in place. There are also 6 adult use only retailers that are open for business. One, and then in terms of the, there's a map here of where they are, and you can find that on our website if you'd like to know. Just so for a little background, towns, municipalities can pass ordinances as to whether or not a retail establishment can open in their town, and some have passed ordinances to take a pause, so prohibited for a year or two, and then revisit it, where others have passed an outright prohibition. So about half the towns have some type of ordinance regarding these retailers, so 44% of them. So I'd also like to highlight that there's a lot in the pipeline. There's about 50 additional retail and hybrid stores that are going to be opening within the next year. In fact, there's about 100 businesses somewhere in that licensing pipeline right now that are expected to open in the next year. But that includes all of them: cultivators, micro cultivators, packagers, transport delivery services, and the like. So how long do they have to open? Oh, sorry, that was I was behind on a slide here. So they have 24 months to open if the license was issued before July of this year, and 14 months for provisional licenses issued after July. That's all set in statute. We don't have any authority to grant extensions on that. Then here, just a little glimpse of the sales from inception. And so the first column is adult use, and the second is the medical marijuana sales. As you can see, they're kind of on par with each other, totaling 97 million for adult use and 98 million for medical marijuana year to date. So it it indicates it's a healthy market. The sales grow at a steady pace. We met with the cultivators and the majority of the retailers to make sure that we're hearing their concerns. I should say I met, and the leadership team, Rod and his team, are in constant contact with them. But just to thank them for participating in the market and hear about their experience, to understand if there are any challenges, to make sure we get ahead of any problems. And they're not here. There's no major concerns about supply or regulatory burdens that they've flagged for us that haven't been addressed. But understand it is a new market, a growing market, and so we're reactive and responsive to challenges as they come up. There, just another note about the there is a cap on the amount of cannabis that adult use individual can purchase, and that we're considering it's at 1/4 of an ounce right now, or of raw flower equivalent, and we're reviewing that to determine if there's going to be an increase and to what amount. Medical sales remain capped at 5 ounces per month. So, in this, sometimes I'm asked, it's not relevant to you, but if we, but we don't make revenue projections, we don't collect the taxes, so I can't talk about how much money the state is receiving or opine on whether or not this is good or bad in terms of meeting expectations. But I can say that in terms of a market, it's healthy, it's a steady and measured growth, and we are happy with it thus far. So sorry.
I had a question going back to that slide.
Sure, yeah.
It looks like as adult use is going up, medical is going down. If you look at the numbers from May, it looks like, is that what was projected? And is that anticipated based on the experience of other states that eventually adult use will take over medical, and medical may not be relevant anymore?
No, so certainly that is not the case, that medical will not be relevant anymore. I know Rod's on the call, and when we get to a discussion, or if he wanted to chime in now, that's fine, to talk about, how the market looks in terms of that. But as I said, there were really no projections, but we wanted to make sure that medical marijuana sales, the medical market had a preservation plan in place, and all of these entities that did convert do have a preservation plan to make sure that the medical plan is a priority. It is a drug, and these patients need that drug. I think that you would see maybe a surge in sales, in the beginning of it, but I can't answer that question. I think that we haven't been tracking medical total sales before this, so it would be helpful to look back and see kind of year to date how medical sales were going prior to the launch of adult use, but we just don't have those numbers. We weren't collecting them from the retailers. But Rod has his hand up, so I'm going to let him kind of chime in, as he is the expert in this.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Dr. D'Souza. We attempted to be thoughtful about the way that we preserve the medical program. There are a number of things in place that kind of incentivize people to that. Just this July, the fees for registration for patients, the state issued fees were removed from the regulations. And we were very excited about that, because we were seeing at that time, if you look at our medical patient numbers, they were dipping. They seem to have rebounded a bit as people waited for the fee and the renewal to go away. They seem to be somewhat plateauing at the moment, and it's important to keep in mind we've added no new conditions. There are folks that maybe are choosing to leave the medical market and go to the adult use market for a variety of reasons, but not all of those are overtly obvious to us at this time. We have not added any new conditions in some time, and we're not really receiving petitions to do so either. So I don't know if we really met kind of a maximum. And by the nature of the debilitating conditions that they are, we do lose patients from time to time in our system. So it's hard to kind of predict why it's doing what it's doing. We've seen other states medical programs drop off more significantly at times, and we did attempt to consider that as best we could with the combination of these two markets.
I can't see if there are hands raised, Tiffany, so maybe you could help me, just because
Okay,
the way my computer
we
is
have
set.
Dr. I think that's Zemsky. He had his hand raised, and then we'll go to Dr. Sellner after.
Sure.
Okay.
So I and I don't know if we want to get into this discussion now, but I do have a couple of concerns regarding, now that we have a recreational use program. One is just access, that obviously in some areas of the state, as the adult use program grows, the dispensaries for adult use are going to be more available than the medical use programs. And so that may lead patients to go to those dispensaries rather than the medical dispensaries. I'm a strong believer that the pharmaceutical model that was set up in Connecticut is a real advantage for our patients, and compared to other states. And many of my patients talk about their relationships with the pharmacist. The other thing I will add, and I just, is how do we make sure patients understand as they're entering or considering medical marijuana, the true advantages of going through the medical system rather than the recreational system? Is there some, for lack of a better term, marketing communications that are used to really make sure? Because I get these questions all the time. I have a number of patients who turn 18. I'm a pediatrician, but who then are considering this, and they don't understand the difference between the two systems. So how do we make sure that patients are getting educated so that they are entering a system that's really built for them, for helping monitor their medical condition and getting them the right product at the right time. We'll stop there.
So let me just, and I know Rod has something to say on this, but let me just the level set for a second here. So, I know we're looking at this slide, but this is not hair on fire cause for concern that the medical market is being impacted in a very severe manner. I mean, these numbers are showing that adult use is growing, and yes, there has been a little bit of a dip in the medical marijuana sales, but by all accounts, both in the data that I've seen and anecdotal, the medical market is very healthy in Connecticut. And you look at, I was going to get to the numbers of patients, Rod touched on that. We are hyper-focused on maintaining that and maintaining the model. There is not a thought in removing the pharmacists or the way that it operates. The patients of that program are very happy with the way it is set up by and large. And, there are great, removing the fee for the registration for both the patient and caregiver, I think has helped greatly and sends a good message. And Rod has a very, aggressive plan for marketing and outreach. And so he can touch on that as well. But your points are well taken, and we are very focused on this. And so if there is a cause for concern, we will let you know. But, as of now, I don't see one. So Rod, did you want to follow up on that?
Sure. The access issue is something we've always had concerns about. And to that end, the hybrid is an interesting model because it does serve both, and it incentivizes, these businesses to do both and keep kind of that medical access. The other thing too that's really important is that delivery is permitted now as well. So those medical patients can have product delivered to their home, and towns aren't able to prohibit the delivery. It is one of the areas that the municipalities cannot stop that delivery. And so that was a big part of the early part of the medical programs conversion. Our dispensaries were able to start that beforehand, and delivery registrants are coming online. We have one online, but they can self-deliver for a period of time until we have a certain number of delivery licenses out there. And the marketing part or the awareness part is challenging. Getting the right information to the right people at the right time is important. We do look to educate predominantly medical professionals about it as well, so they can kind of have better information, because those are the people that they trust to hear about this, not necessarily kind of the programs. So that's a really critical part of that. And, you guys have been such great ambassadors for the program. And explaining the pros and cons to cannabis use, we've really appreciated this board's kind of engagement and activity here. So I think we'll continue to look to do things like that to help people with that, and we announce things about it all the time, and we continue to consider other things to do. How do we highlight the benefits between the two programs and the differences? And unfortunately, a lot of that's just website related. But we don't always know who our patients are going to be, right? And so it's really our medical professionals are the front line of some of that work.
And Dr. Salner, and then Carol Lisi.
Okay, Dr. Salner, good morning.
You're muted. Probably. No, you're still muted.
I'm just going to take this off so I can see everyone.
Maybe now. Yeah, you're still muted. Dr. Carolisi, do you want to go while Dr. Salner figures out his microphone? Oh, here, I could actually do it here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, for some reason
I
got
I
muted.
changed a setting here. There we go.
Oh, okay.
And
I
for
was like,
Dr.
I
Kaiwas too,
disappeared.
I changed your setting.
No, I concur on Dr. Zemsky's concern. And, you know, when I speak to my patients, I try to explain to them, you know, there is a difference between the recreational versus the medical. And that's something that they have to understand and be educated appropriately for. So they think they're going to go to the recreational component and get the same products, which they're not. And also I try to explain to them that, you know, they need to speak to the pharmacist there so they can understand a little bit more what types of products they have. The other issue that we've been coming up with is that there's a shortage on a lot of the products that they're very happy with. And I'm not sure if that's a supply and demand issue, or is that just the producers are not keeping up with the amount of requirements for each dispensary, since the dispensaries have opened up more locations. Maybe they can't keep up with the demand. So that was something that was brought up by some of the patients for me to, you know, explain to you guys and to see if, you know, what can be done about that. Especially like the ointments and the creams. A lot of my patients, I'm a pain management specialist. So I explained to them, you know, if you have a bad joint, a bad shoulder, you can use the ointments and the creams that are very, very helpful. And some of these dispensaries, unfortunately, are short on the supply. So I was just wondering, you know, what's going to be done about that, and if there's going to be a expansion of production of those products.
You know, I mean, I think, first of all, this is very helpful to have this conversation. It complements what we've discussed with the market participants. And so what we're hearing from them and, you know, feedback from you and your patients is critical, you know, a critical piece of this. I think we've had some anecdotal reports of supply issues or finding particular products. Rod can address that in more detail, but I do think that you will see, as more growers or cultivators, if you will, come online, that the amount, I don't think that there's a challenge with the supply in total volume, if you will, but in certain areas of products, they may be different now or not as, you know, available at certain times, or maybe just the kind of during the launch, but nothing systemic that has been brought to my attention. On the retail and the adult use side, we hear that, you know, other surrounding states have a bigger, you know, variety of products. And so again, so that's, you know, that's a challenge there. And as more cultivators come online, they will be able to provide a different assortment of the way that the product is being sold. You know, to me, it was when I looked at some of the numbers too, it was remarkable that over half the sales remain in flower. You know, I just, you know, being kind of new to this, I thought that it would be more of the edible or other forms, but that's true. But Rod, did you want to talk about the particular medical products and the production?
Yeah, we've heard those complaints as well, and we're working with the industry to encourage them to continue to supply those products that are kind of in those categories that people are struggling with. And to Commissioner Caffarelli's point, we do have some new folks coming online already. We have 2 new licensees, one and one of them is largely going to be probably producing product that gets extracted, and the extracted product is what ends up in these types of creams and topicals. And my hope is that plus these other kind of manufacturing types of facilities that are allowed to be licensed in this new market will fill those holes as well, because they'll have the capacity to do that work. You know, and because some of it requires specialized equipment and specialized training to make sure they're making consistent kind of high quality product. And so it's challenging. They've had to adapt a lot, and you know, you have to adapt to a plant, you know, that is produced kind of in 6-month cycles roughly, and you know, the ebbs and flows of that are a natural challenge. But we continue to keep our eye on it, and you know, we have to hear from folks like you all. So please bring those to us when you hear them, and be as specific as you can about the product types, so that we can try to adjust that as best we can.
And then
Thank you.
Dr. Salner and then Dr. Berry.
Thanks very much, Tiffany. I just wanted to also mention, in addition to the huge benefit that the pharmacist offers to the patient in counseling them in the medical program about formulation and format, the other benefit is that the price is lower because the medical product is not taxed, whereas the adult use product is. So there's definitely a couple benefits to patients staying in the medical program. And at least in the patients whom I certified, they seem to be happy staying in the medical program.
That's good to hear too. And also very good points, and certain products that are only available to the medical patients as well in terms of the concentration. So there are a lot of benefits to staying in the medical program, and I think as this kind of sorts out, we are in year one, I mean, we're just but we're very focused on tracking it, and that's why this is a great discussion, and that's why it's the first thing I brought up with you all, because I'm sure it's top of mind, and it is for us, and I want you to know that. And so, Dr. Berry.
Good morning, and everybody, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Commissioner Caffarelli. So
You too.
So if people don't know, I have to do my traditional refrain. We should be having this data. It should not be anecdotal, where people tell you that, oh, this ointment is not sufficient. If we're tracking the disease or the ICD code, the diagnostic code with the formulations, we would know this in advance. And I've proposed this every time because there's so many ways that we should know this through gathering data. And the data, they have the data at the dispensaries. I feel like, if you're not plugged into the system from a health equity standpoint, it may be easier to self-medicate because you may not have consistent access to a doctor, or they may not see the benefits of cost versus access, if you have to go through a middle person. And I also think that there should be this was always my concern when the recreational was coming online, is that people who take it for medical reasons will be shortchanged. There should be some kind of requirement, ideally, that these patients get priority in terms of supply and demand. They could do a retroactive assessment of who's coming for what, and then adjust the inventory accordingly, because patients should not suffer. And mind you, I'm also taking into account that some people are probably self-medicating through the recreational route and don't have it, as clear supervision as with having a pain physician. So I understand one of the issues would be cost, but I know I just saw $194 million. So at some point, a portion of that to maintain a database, extracting data that's already had by the dispensary should be a consideration.
Yeah, there's a lot of data out there. Well, first of all, nice to meet you as well, Doctor. And thank you. There is a lot of data that they're tracking, and I'll let Rod speak to kind of your points in terms of the specific codes and medicines that you're tracking. But medical patients are given a priority, and that was always the priority as this program came online, the adult use. And so, the policymakers and the agency attempted to put in guardrails, both in statute and regulation and policies and procedures, to make sure that's happening. It's a changing market, and we're kind of still reacting, if you will, to certain experiences that we're having. So again, your comments are very well taken, and these are suggestions that can be relayed to the policymakers as we enter a new session, or considered as regs are reviewed as well. So happy to continue this discussion, in terms of the data that you feel that we should be collecting and reviewing, and perhaps with your assistance, and what we can do as a result of that. But I do feel very strongly that there is a great constitutional framework of rights for medical patients in the program to guard against a lot of these issues that the agency saw may happen. And so if there are some tweaks that are necessary, I would not be surprised. I mean, the legislature, that was one of the things I was going to talk about next, is they've already changed it, a couple times since it passed. And we're not even a year into it. So they recognize that it's a growing market, and it will need to adapt to how the market plays out. And so I hear you, and I appreciate those concerns, and I'm willing to work with you and understand what your needs are. So thank you, and I'm sure Rod has something to add, or maybe not. So
No, Dr. Barry continues to bring up very good points about data. We are gaining familiarity with our seed to sale tracking system, which is a new thing for us, and it's generating these data points that you're seeing now. And there's more data in there that we continue to hone and will release as we get comfortable with it and ensure its accuracy and validity. Our market is learning how to use seed to sale and kind of interact with that as well. These are new things and steps towards where I think Dr. Barry would like to see us. There is more that can come. We're still hiring staff to kind of ramp up for this program. And the program itself is a large lift for the agency. It takes up a significant portion of my daily activities, and a number of my staff members who continue to learn and expand in that. And there are, like Commissioner Caffarelli said, there's 100 new licensees in the pipeline too. And so balancing all of that is a juggle for us all. And having pharmacists inside of the hybrids was so critical to us, so that if there was something that is kind of identified as a medical related complaint that someone's looking for, that my hope is that they're connecting people to the pharmacist to give them some more advice, and how to kind of find a practitioner to assist them with getting their medical card, and to do other things along those lines to really kind of help our patients get the help that they need and deserve, right? If they're having these conditions that fit our list. And we also want to make sure we're hearing new conditions too that may be benefiting from cannabis. And to date, we haven't gotten a lot of that. We have one more petition in the pipeline, but we haven't seen a lot lately. It is dramatically slowed down, and some of that's an effect of kind of giving a broader diagnosis up front, which we thought was a good idea, which you all thought was a good idea. I happen to agree. So that we're not kind of like rewriting the DSM. Because that would be significant undertaking and a lot of law. So it is interesting. And just so you all know, there is an adult use cannabis versus medical cannabis kind of like cheat sheet on our website, and it's ct.gov/cannabis. And the data that we showed about the financial numbers do not include taxes. So there's no tax rate there. That's just the price of the product. And the tax rate is calculated totally and contained totally in a separate agency in revenue services. So just so you know that data is not encompassing the actual sale price. And there's some complicated tax structure in the sale price too, with the THC tax additionally. And so I just want you to make you aware of that. And that's areas where medical patients will benefit significantly.
Yeah, I think, and Rod, if we were able to put that in the chat, maybe that would be helpful, a link to that. But also, there's another way to kind of look at this, and to Dr. Sellner's point, there are a host of benefits to being in the medical program. And I think that as the expansion of cannabis in Connecticut happens through the medical and now adult use, the adult use patients may see the benefits when they're in there of tax-free products, of access to pharmacists. They could understand better if they were perhaps self-medicating. They could understand and use a pharmacist to do that by getting certified, which is now free. So there's a lot of crossover that hopefully could occur maybe from the adult use to the medical program. So that is something that we're hoping to see and capture, and also some of the outreach to let people know that, if they're there to use cannabis, that there exists a program that they could do so safely and with good guidance and advice, and use it as a drug with the help of medical professionals such as, yourselves certifying them and guiding them, and the pharmacist on a day-to-day basis kind of interacting with them. So, that's kind of another way to look at it. So it's not all, it's not, the adult use market is not all an end to the medical market. There are some aspects that could actually help benefit the program too. So I think there was another hand as well.
No, not from the board.
Okay. All right, so I'm not going to go back to the slides because I was just about wrapping up with them, but I did want to talk about, like I said, the legislative changes that happened recently. That the lottos were changed so that you can only have one applicant per business. It used to be as many times as you paid. And they also clarified high THC hemp products and Delta 8 and 9, and those were showing up in the unregulated market in smoke shops and convenience stores and the likes. So there was clarity added to that so that law enforcement could actually take action against those entities and get those off the shelves. So, and get people into the regulated market, be it adult use cannabis or the medical market. But I mean, first and foremost, the safety of the Connecticut consumers was at risk having these unregulated markets that people thought, they kind of associate them all as one, and wanted to make sure that they were addressed, the legislature that is. And so they did pass a law that went into effect in part in July, in part in October, and there's guidance coming from the law enforcement agencies that will guide them as to how to do this, that will actually be done by the end of the month. So you should be seeing some action there. And then, as we've discussed, the fees were eliminated. And then, so what's to come? A second lottery we haven't scheduled. We're kind of evaluating what's going on in terms of issuing more licenses. And then the SEC is adopting the criteria that changed from recent legislative changes. And they are, again, a separate entity that is oftentimes confused with DCP, but they operate on their own. They're by a board of 15 members. We hold one seat there. They're housed in DCD, and they execute a host of programs with regard to the adult use cannabis industry. So that was my update from that market. And then in terms of the medical, we've all said it. So there's 42,891 patients and 1,745 certifying physicians. No more application fees as of July 1 for patients and caregivers. The producers we talked about, there was a move from Southern Connecticut Wellness moving from Milford to Orange, and then the BizNet. We'll get to the business update, but that was actually pretty much most of my updates. And so I don't know if you had any more general questions about what's going on in the medical program or the adult use program, or just off topic. Dr. D'Souza.
Dr. D'Souza.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question about where we can get information about the funds that have been reserved for research. And are there numbers on that? Is there any transparency around that? I know a number of my colleagues here at Yale have been interested in applying for funds that I believe were supposed to be earmarked. Some portion of the revenue was earmarked towards research, and I just wanted to follow up on that. Thank you.
Rod, do you know about that?
I'll have to look into that piece specifically for you, Dr. D'Souza. It's the funding parts of these are areas that generally are kind of outside of my purview. I've been mostly responsible for the licensing components of it, and so I will review it and get you guys all something. If not, for the next meeting before then, via email.
And Dr. Prywaz.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Doctor.
I'm sorry. Nice to meet you, Commissioner. I'm sorry I
Nice
got a
to
little
meet
bit
you.
late to the meeting, some technical difficulties, but
I'm glad
I
you
had
could make it.
Thank you. I have a question. My practice recently moved to be exclusively telemedicine. And the question I have, and I spoke with the former commissioner, about how long will we as physicians be able to continue to register our patients via telemedicine? And also, are there any medical legal concerns that we should be aware of continuing with this format, since we're not actually doing a physical examination, but we are reviewing medical records, we are interviewing patients, we are educating them about medical cannabis and so forth. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure, I think Rod popped up and I think
Yeah, so I believe it was in the last session, or maybe the session before. I think it was last session. We extended the ability to have telemedicine certifications indefinitely. There's no longer a time frame that limits it. We'd previously lumped it in with other telemedicine exemptions. But this particular one, it was codified in the last. I am 99% sure it was in the last session. So there is no more really end to that. As far as the legal concerns, Doc, I don't know if this is the right avenue for us to answer that. We're not permitted to give you legal advice in that way. And so I think you would need to seek counsel for that.
Yeah, but my understanding is that we're kind of indemnified in some way because we're not actually prescribing cannabis. We're registering patients. There's a difference. Could you clarify that?
That was the intention of the way the language was written. But it has not yet been challenged in any way, shape, or form. So it's hard to predict how that would kind of resolve if it were brought to a hearing. But that is the way it was drafted. The rules were drafted in a way to avoid a lot of federal conflicts, and to date we have not seen any.
Okay. The only other issue that I had regarding that is that when I contacted my malpractice insurance carrier in the state of Connecticut, they kind of raised their eyebrows when I let them know that I was registering patients in the medical marijuana program and that they would not provide any coverage for that. And so that's why I'm looking for some clarification and understanding regarding that moving forward.
well, we can't give you legal advice. I mean, happy to connect you with one of the attorneys in the drug control division who can, give you some references as to background on the law and maybe connect, your insurance carrier or lawyer with the right people. So,
Okay,
we could do that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any other from the board? So there is a BizNet update. I'm told that the website will be down Saturday for 5 hours, the 28th of October, starting at 8 a.m. just for some updates. So just as an FYI on that, Dr. Salner has raised his hand.
Thanks, Commissioner. Just one other question. I understand from what the media is saying that the federal government is contemplating removing cannabis from Schedule 1. I don't know if any of our Connecticut team have been engaged in those conversations or deliberations. I know that Senator Blumenthal's office was in some way involved in advocating for that. And I just wanted to know if you might be able to project what the implications will be of that change as it moves potentially from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2.
So we have talked about this, and we want to get ahead of that. You know, it's your guess is as good as anyone trying to read the tea leaves in Washington. You know, I do have a theory, and I think it might happen sooner than most people predict, but you know, who am I? And you know, my guess would be it would actually be a different schedule than 2, maybe 3, but we'll see. Rod's gonna kill me for saying this too, by the way. But but so in terms of, we have talked about, you know, how that'll affect the department and the industry in terms of interstate, you know, back and forth and a whole host of other issues, but nothing ready for prime time. You know, I mean, if you have, so, I mean, I guess my takeaway for you is that our head is not in the sand with regard to this, and very aware and in tune with what is going on in Washington, and talking to those not the senators, but to, you know, other people who are somewhat in the know on this. But you know, again, we see in Washington, things turn on a dime. So I mean, it could be headed in a great path for, you know, next year, let's say. And you know, just there's a lot going on down there, and that is a big big unknown. So, but we are looking at forward, because eventually do believe that one day this will happen. And so if it does, we want to be ready, just like we were ready, because we thought that you know, eventually the legislature in Connecticut would pass the adult use cannabis. So it wasn't something that had to be created overnight, but a lot of thought had been put into it, and have been looking at how other states had handled it, and especially with regard to, you know, the interplay with the medical market. So it's a good point. We are looking at it now. Rod will probably rehabilitate most of what I said that's wrong.
No, you did fine. We we are looking at it. It's going to be interesting. Connecticut took a very unique approach initially to it and moved it to Schedule 2. And so I think our program may be poised to handle it really well already. That being said, Schedule 3 is a place where people talk about it potentially landing, but really any schedule that it would land in is really an interesting exercise, and they're still probably going to have to weigh in on what the impacts are on state programs, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, this scheduling has some level of kind of proven medical benefit, and usually it gets tied to a certain, you know, series of chemicals. Cannabis is unique in certain ways compared to other traditional solid dosage forms and other drugs, in that a lot of people talk about its entourage effect, and how all of the ingredients in the product kind of help with that, but we don't see a lot of botanical drugs. You know, FDA has a pathway for botanical drugs, but I think it's a complicated pathway, because you don't really, teasing out each individual drug's effect or chemical's effect on the human body is really, really challenging. And so, and you know, typically these drugs have a pretty tight pathway that they follow in, or a closed loop of distribution, as you'll hear used. And this, in a traditional sense, is already out, like not following that in the normal kind of federal way. And so it will be really interesting to see. You know, there's many states, we've joined many states in kind of having this dual market. And so there will be a lot of challenges to what that does, and to see how it fits our program specifically. And then how much interstate commerce is permitted as part of those changes is a really, like, a unique part that's really hard to predict, you know, because a lot of our program is based on it kind of residing all in our borders.
And I think another thing to watch too is the complement to that would be the banking issues that the Congress would probably take up close to the same, you know, about the same time that they were to do that. And that would only help the medical program too, well, the entire program, but to kind of bring it into the main frame of bank, you know, the ability to join the banking world. So then let's see what's next on the agenda. I guess if there's nothing else, we can take a motion to adjourn. Is there anything else from the board?
Nope.
All right, well, it was a pleasure to meet with you, spend some time with you. I appreciate your patience as I kind of get into this role. And so always here, so if you need something, just reach out. And we'll follow up on some of those questions that you raised. And I look forward to seeing you. I do know that there's a petition that'll be coming. I'm not sure what it's for. So there'll be a meeting about that for another condition, so.
Commissioner, can you send us your email address so in case we had questions, we can send them to you?
Of course, yeah.
Great, thank you.
And here, out of the curiosity, I will tell you, the petition is on female orgasmic difficulty disorder.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. All right,
And Dr.
well,
Carlesi, just so you know, the commissioner's email is he's in the thread that we've had about this meeting as well. Just in case you needed it sooner, but it is there. And I did send everybody that cannabis knowledge article about the comparisons between the brand, medical and adult use. And so you feel free to do that. And there is some good information out on our website that we put out there. I know there's a lot there, and sometimes because there is so much, it can be hard to find things. But we do talk a lot about things like cannabis hyperemesis, which was a growing concern for this population, and encouraging people, physicians and other medical professionals to ask about it, about the cannabis use for individuals that are presenting with those types of symptoms in particular, but always so that they have a good idea what's happening. Because as you can see, we do have a pretty robust market and a group of people using these products. And so we've heard a lot of stories of folks that kind of disclose that information a little later in the game, and it leads to a number of tests, right, for those GI related issues and, extra CAT scans and things like that aren't always needed.
Perfect.
All right.
Great.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.